was documenting cartoon tattooing the biggest artist in the world at that time.
It is a buddy comedy.
And the more we hung out, the more we just started building on ideas of things that we could do to make money that weren't illegal. We looked at each other and we were like, we need to go to the next level, man.
And they grew that empire, Soul Assassin Studios.
Just happened.
I'll tell you what just happened is the start of Cordkillers!
Welcome to Cordkillers, the show about watching the stuff you love when you want, where you want, however you want. I want you to keep watching. I'm Tom Merritt.
Doggone right. That's why we're doing everything we can that ain't illegal. It's me and Tom Merritt. Also joined.
That's right. We're just trying to make that money.
Also
just
joined
like pioneering tattoo artists.
by internet all-star Jeff Cannata. Thank you so much for hanging out with us, man.
Hello, friends. It's been too long.
Yeah,
It
you're
has.
doggone
Good to see
right. So real quick, before we jump in, Bryce, what did we just look at? Was that like an LA Inc. spinoff or something?
That is LA Originals, a new doc. I'm assuming it's a docu-series about Mr. Cartoon and Estevan Oriol, pioneering tattoo artist and photographer at the heart of 90s LA hip-hop. That's coming April 10 to Netflix.
Mr. Cartoon to you.
I didn't go to 4 years of Mr. School to be called
No,
professor.
just Mr. Cartoon. Mr. Cartoon is my father. Folks, we got a lot to talk about, but the day has finally come. There are two things that I think this show in its history has looked forward to. One was the launch of Apple TV Plus, which was going to be great. And the other is our primary target, Quibi. If you're Canadian, or USAN, as I call the Americans, you can get a 90-day free trial of Quibi right now with or without ads. I thought you could only get the one with ads. But apparently Sarah Lane on Daily Tech News Show abused me of that notion. Don't let him fool you. You can get the 90-day free trial without ads. Don't let him. Once you're locked in, though. The offer ends at the end of April. If you're a T-Mobile family plan user, you can outdo all of that and get a year free until July 7th. There are 50 shows at launch, including Fresh Daily from Rotten Tomatoes. That's the only one you need to pay attention to because my wife works on. No, there's Chrissy's Court with Chrissy Teigen as a judge in a small claims court. Most Dangerous Game, a drama starring Liam Hemsworth and Christoph Waltz. Survive, starring Sophie Turner. There's a ton of stuff on there. Eventually, this thing will cost you, as I said, $4.99 a month or $7.99 a month without ads. Episodes are around 5 to 10 minutes long and can only be viewed on your mobile device. No casting, no bigger screens.
How dare you want to cast? How dare you?
Also, one at a time. No sharing these logins. If you're watching, nobody else can watch. Folks, the idea of Quibi was when you're waiting in line, you watch Quibi. That's a little reduced right now, unless you're at a grocery store or a testing center. So Quibi CTO Rob Post told TechCrunch, I'm looking to take small breaks more than ever before working from home, to stand up, walk around, go outside. Our use cases are these in-between moments. Now more than ever, that use case is still present, Rob Post told himself to TechCrunch. Early reviews of the shows are largely positive. People think the content's not bad. They themselves see their competition as YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, not Netflix, Prime Video, Hulu. Let's start with you, Brian. How are you feeling about Quibi today?
First of all, I am the coward of the three of us. I'm the only one who hasn't seen a single Quibi show. I refuse to sign up for the free trial service because there's some part of me that, you know what? Actually, hold on. I could use a burner credit card, but that's neither here nor there. Here's the important part. How did we know the rough launch date of Quibi? Did they tell us it would be late on a Sunday night in advance? Because I seem to remember them just saying, I don't know, April-ish. And then we got
They said April 6th. It was April 6th, and it was midnight Eastern.
Okay. Who launches anything that matters to anyone ever late on a Sunday night? And that includes you, Westworld. That's right. I went there.
It was only late on a Sunday night if you had it in portrait mode, if you turned it horizontal.
And if you wished 3 times to Steven Spielberg, it suddenly showed up.
I don't know. That's your big Quibi criticism is launching it at midnight on a Sunday?
No, I do feel like that is a significant factor as far as a lack of confidence in this thing. I do know that an awful lot of money is being spent in order to advertise it on TikTok.
Yeah, that is not a sign of lack of confidence. This company has no lack of confidence. That is a sign of this is an engineering company that was like, we're launching April 6th. April 6th begins at 12:01. That is when we will launch.
Actually, that's a really good point. Man, look, I am the least qualified of everybody on the panel to talk about Quibi because, number one, I've already made my mind up about it. Number two, I refuse to sign up for it. Number three, I'm convinced, despite a lack of encountering any evidence, that I am right, that it's a terrible idea, a terrible product, it's a solution for a problem that nobody has, and that I don't like it. But, you know, who did sign up for it? One Bryce Castillo. Bryce, I believe of the four of us, you gave Quibi the old college try.
Yeah, I think I've watched a lot of stuff now. I think I've seen all of the episodes of the Most Dangerous Game thing, the game show. I watched a little bit of that Sophie Turner thing. I've seen a good amount of it in the 1.5 hours I had free today. So.
There you go. That's the value proposition.
And
you only have an hour and a half free. You can watch a lot of things.
And what's the verdict?
As the shows that are good, they are not good in that format. All right. I think the Most Dangerous Game stuff could be good, but I don't want to watch it 6 minutes at a time. And then the stuff that's built for the format doesn't always feel great. You know, I don't love the game show, and I don't know how I feel about it in large. But at least that is designed to fit in this, 8-minute time slot, whatever. I think coming at it from both angles, it's kind of a weird mismatch. I don't know. Tom, you saw some stuff, right?
I did. Jeff, I'm curious of your opinions first, though.
I mean, I have a hard time. Like Brian, I think of this as a solution searching for a problem, but I also feel like this was not designed for people who have lived a life before phones. You know, we assume. I'll just speak for myself. I assume that if I want to watch something, I want to watch it in the best possible way, and I think there's an entire generation of people that just don't think that way. And for them, the phone is everything. And maybe this is great. Maybe 6 minutes is great. You talked about him saying that their competition is TikTok and not Hulu or Netflix. I think their competition is Twitter. I think the competition is like, oh, I'm standing here for a couple seconds. I'll load up Twitter and just look at nothing for a second. I might as well look at this dumb show for a couple of seconds. I personally don't have use cases like that. I mean, I will look at Twitter, so I guess I do, but I'm not interested in looking at entertainment that way. That's just not how I consume or have any desire to, but I think it's because I grew up at a time when a show was on at 8 o'clock. So you went into the television at 8 o'clock and you watched it. And I just don't think young people are programmed that way anymore. It is a completely different paradigm. And so I think I'm ill-equipped to even judge it.
Yeah. I mean, I also think this is a solution in search of a problem. I also will say that maybe I'm not the target market for some of the reasons that Jeff just said. I'm fine watching some videos on my phone. I don't have a problem with that. I don't have some, Scorsese-like objection to if it's got Christoph Waltz, it should be in the big screen or anything like that. But what I found was okay, this is supposed to just be quick, lightweight, not going to demand my time sort of stuff. And it didn't feel like that to me. In fact, the Most Dangerous Game, the one with Hemsworth and Waltz, felt slow. And I could tell that if that was up on my television and I was just leaning back watching it, I wouldn't have minded so much that it was slow, because I would have known, oh, this is going to take 90 minutes to unfold. This is just a conversation to set up. I'm going to be patient. But when I'm in the mindset of you're only supposed to be taking 5, max 10 minutes of my time, get to the action. TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, those are all things that live on, we will always be giving you a dopamine hit every minute that you're looking at this. And that's not what these shows are doing. These shows are long form shows that have been broken up into 5 to 10 minute segments.
Can I
Well,
throw
it's the
out
same thing. Do you guys remember that whole thing that happened when, years ago, when everybody was looking at email? I guess it was even more frequent. It happened again with Twitter, but there were these companies or organizations that would say, "Hey, we'll send you a full novel in a series of emails. You're used to sitting down and reading your emails, or we'll tweet out a novel." And it's like, oh, that sounds like the perfect concept, because I do sit down and read emails. I do read Twitter, and now I can read a novel that way. Except that just doesn't work. It just doesn't. How your brain. You don't want to read a novel. It's a completely different process.
You don't want to read an email. You have to read an email. Right?
This is so funny because Jeff and I had the exact same impulse from opposite directions. You're talking about a format that deserves to be longer form and how inappropriate it feels all chopped up. What I felt recently was I finally went and watched an episode of Last Week Tonight with John Oliver, which normally I love, and it was him alone in a room with the white screen behind, delivering what to me looked like a traditional YouTube thought piece monologue, only with none of the tricks that work in a YouTube thought piece monologue. None of the punching in, none of the non sequiturs, none of the jump cuts or any of that. Instead, he would just deliver the first line, pause awkwardly for an applause break that was not happening, and then go into the next one. It was a case where he very clearly was very excellently executing a piece of content, but it was wedged into a format that it did not belong. And I think we're both expressing the same idea, but from two different angles on there.
Yeah, you really realize how big of a difference a studio audience makes on a show like that. And I'm sure you guys didn't watch this, but I also watched WrestleMania this weekend.
Oh my God, I heard it was bonkers.
It was bonkers. It was truly bonkers. The idea that they were going to the analogy that I was making to people would be, it's like if somebody said, you know what, we're going to go ahead with the Super Bowl, but we're going to play it inside this high school gym. That is what it was like watching it. It is supposedly the grandest stage of them all, and it's all about spectacle. And they did it inside a gym with no audience. It was weird. There was no reaction. I mean, it's a sport built around crowd interaction and feedback and chants and back and forth. Man, it was weird. But I think we're living through all of that stuff, and I think it speaks to the same thing you're talking about, which there are certain things that work because they organically were built up inside a certain structure, right? A movie was sort of evolved from a stage play. Right? Mm-hmm. There are these things that have vestigial elements that are brought with them.
If I can chase your tail on this one, in the early days of movies, they described a movie positively in the early days as theatrical, but then later, as movies realized their own format, that same sentiment became a negative when they say, oh, it looks so staged. Same thing happened in video games. In the beginning, it was a positive to say a video game was very cinematic, but then a few years later, when people realized that video games had their own stories to tell, then it became, quote, on rails. It became a negative on there. So we're seeing a similar thing happen right now, where weirdly traditional television is trying to ape, or I guess has to be wedged into the same structure that YouTube and a bunch of single person to camera formats have done, but they're not landing. Same thing with Quibi in the phones.
Everybody's trying to do what YouTube did. Right? Hulu started because they wanted to crush YouTube, and they succeeded by not crushing YouTube and doing something entirely different. Vessel was going to crush YouTube. TikTok didn't want to crush YouTube. TikTok just figured out its own way of evolving out of something, saying, oh, these like lyric videos can expand to be all kinds of things. And that's where the successful products on the internet have come from. Like, oh, we do this one thing really well, and then people start to use it for other stuff. Look at Twitter, for instance. Look at Facebook, for instance. It used to be for a very narrow purpose, looking up people at Harvard, and it expanded. The mistake I see Quibi making is starting with the premise of we're going to beat TikTok, Instagram, YouTube by filling this niche of time, but not having a purpose that you can easily explain to people that that they'll buy, like saying, oh, we want to fill the time. People are like, I got all kinds of things to fill the time. What's special about yours?
Yeah, that's a very good point. And the other thing I would bring up will also sound like an, get off my lawn, kids kind of thing, is that all three of us very much lived through the time when internet video was finding its legs. And I know I had the experience, and I suspect you both had the experience as well, of we started making shows for the internet, and we made the show we wanted to make. And then at a certain point, somebody went, all shows on the internet have to be really short.
Yeah.
Because everybody wants really short stuff.
Average view time is 2 minutes, 12 seconds or whatever.
Exactly. So if you're going to have a show and it's going to be delivered on the internet, it's got to be really short. And I know our experience was, hey, we're making an hour-long show here. What are we going to do? And then we chopped up our show. We came up with all these new ideas. And I was still proud of the show we were making. But at a certain point, people went, oh, no, that has nothing to do with it. People will watch long stuff on the internet, and they'll watch short stuff on the internet. And the length has nothing to do with the viewership. So I kind of feel like this is a fool's errand anyway. Like this idea that, well, you can only watch it on your phone. And so because you're only going to watch it on your phone, it has to be super short.
So
give me a pause button and a resume button, and that's all that matters, right? People can stop watching a YouTube video and then pick it up later, and lots of people do. That's how I listen to podcasts all the time, is that I listen 20 minutes on a drive and then 20 more minutes on another drive, and it's weird.
I am so thankful to hear you put it this way, because you just reminded me of, in skeptic circles, there's a famous mythical tale of the time during World War II where there was some island that I want to say down near Easter Island or whatever, that was a refilling depot. So all of a sudden, all of these natives, this is probably somehow racist, I don't know, but these natives, all of a sudden, these B-52 bombers were landing, they were refilling, and all of a sudden there was liquor and food and eccentricities and all this stuff, and then they would fly off or whatever, and then one day the war ended, and all of a sudden these ships stopped showing up, and so they were like, well, what was it that everybody did? I remember there was a tower, and there was like a long strip, and there was like somebody who had headphones on and antennas out of it. So they went out and they took coconuts and chopped them in half, and they made fake headphones with bamboo strips for antennas and all that stuff. And they did all of the things that people seem to do, but for some reason, the food and the supplies and the medicine didn't show up.
Wait, Brian, you're trying to say Quibi's a cargo cult?
Yep, that's exactly what I'm saying. Congratulations, Quibi. You're a cargo cult. You aped exactly all of the tropes and all of the specifics and all of the things that don't matter about what you were trying to emulate, and it will derive you absolutely nothing.
I think the exception there would be if the content's really good. It kind of doesn't matter, right?
I agree. And to my defense, preemptively, because I've been crapping on Quibi for a while, but show up with content and I'm all on board. But it doesn't sound like they showed up with content.
So, going back into that timeline again that I mentioned earlier, Hulu thought they could stomp on YouTube because they saw YouTube as a haven for piracy, and said, we'll give people the real thing. And it turned out that while there was a haven for piracy on YouTube, that wasn't what made YouTube successful. So Hulu ended up being successful anyway, but not stopping YouTube. Vessel came along and said, aha, the problem with YouTube that we can exploit is the lack of quality control. We'll take only the best people from YouTube and put them on Vessel. But what they ended up doing was not getting an audience because they put it behind a paywall. And so Quibi has come along and said, well, the reason people didn't go behind the paywall is the quality of the content wasn't good enough. They wouldn't pay for the thing they could get for free on YouTube. We'll give them higher quality, and then they'll want to pay for it. We'll also give them a 90-day free trial to try to get them addicted, and then they will want it. And so it brings it right back to what you were saying, Brian, which is the content going to be high enough quality? And generally the reviews are pretty high. The content reviews generally are pretty good. Now, I have word that the Rotten Tomatoes scores are not that great. So that is an interesting thing to kind of watch as this all gets reviewed and the scores solidify. It has to have a hit. It has to have the thing that everybody's talking about. Oh my gosh, you have to see the Tiger King of Quibi, right? If it doesn't have that,
House of Cards.
Exactly.
because I feel like they're also benefiting a little bit from the fact that we're already used to this thing where we got our Netflix and we got our Hulu and we got our Disney Plus and we got our Apple TV and we got this thing is more ingrained to go, oh yeah, $4.99 to add this grouping of content. I mean, it's really ridiculous. It's becoming cable all over again, bespoke cable, and then somebody's going to go like, we're going to package it together. It's going to be great. But I think that there is maybe a right time, right place potential for Quibi, where it's like people go, oh yeah, the paywall thing doesn't bother me because now I'm getting a package of content that is compelling to me if the content is compelling. But you're absolutely right, Tom, that the reason that Netflix transformed from hey, your favorite movie can be sent to your house in a little paper packet to I got to subscribe to this because the content is there is House of Cards, right? That was that first thing that everybody was like, you got to see this. They're doing something really cool and special here. This is one of the better shows on TV. And it put them on the map. And then, they realized, oh, we'll double down on content. And it sounds like Quibi recognized that from the top and tried to put a lot of money and energy into developing original content. It's just, did they succeed?
So before we wrap up, let me just throw out artistically, and this is a little snippet I pinched from Penn and Teller. They said something long ago to the effect of, let hate, not love, be your guiding force. The general idea being, if you love something and you try to copy it, the best you're going to be is a pale imitation of the thing you love. But if you hate something, be the opposite of it and you create something totally new. Almost every major advance we've seen in the world of media creation has been letting hate, not love, be their guide. YouTube was a place where people hated the gatekeepers. They hated the fact that people didn't get right to the point. You had to wait for stuff, and they hated ads. And so, boom, all of a sudden YouTube is a hit. Netflix was a place for people who hated to go to Blockbuster and pick out movies and then drive home. So you got them by mail. Later, they people who hated even having to wait for their Netflix DVDs by mail, they were able to get something instantly downloaded on there. Quibi has nothing. Like, what is the thing that people hate that Quibi solves? Because Napster had a thing that everybody hated, buying albums, and it solved it. BitTorrent did. Everything did. Podcasting did. What do you hate? You hate driving without your programs exactly when you want them.
I'll tell you that the way this fits the profile is that Jeffrey Katzenberg hates YouTube.
Yes.
And so he's making something that's better. He's like, oh, you want short 5 to 10 minute videos? I know the people who can make very good ones, and it'll be so much better than that crap you're putting on YouTube. That's not how he talks. I'm sure that's not what he even believes. But that does feel to me what Quibi is based on, is like, we can do this better because we've been doing this for a long time. So I'm going to get Spielberg and all these big directors and actors, etc.
Correct. And that's a classic case of a provider approaching a problem with thinking about what they have and not thinking about what the world wants. Like in the case of Vessel, it's like nobody was saying, you know what I hate is watching my favorite creators on YouTube. I wish somebody would artificially delay all of this content and allow me to pay for it to arrive at the same time that it normally arrives.
Having to sift through all these other things on YouTube I don't have to watch. I wish someone would collect all my favorite people in one place. It's like nobody really cared about that.
Exactly.
Right.
I think that hate framework is just another kind of a dark way of saying it's a solution in search of a problem.
Yes.
Right? What's the problem you're solving? The problem being a thing you hate, I guess. But where I am not willing to be as strident as you, Brian, even though I feel similarly, is because I worry my blind spot is the thing people hate content that's not made for my phone? Is the thing that people hate like, man, if this was just made for the device I prefer to watch it on, it would be so much better. I don't want to watch a thing that's not made for this.
Let me be as generous as I can to Quibi, and I will say that while I appreciate content that is, landscape and format, I do hate holding my phone this way with two hands rather than this way with one hand. And if they could tell an amazing story that takes advantage of the portrait, whether it's a split screen thing with something happening at the top and then everything else happening in a square underneath or whatever. I feel like there's something there, but we haven't seen it from Quibi, unfortunately.
Yeah, having watched a good amount of stuff, like I don't know that there are many shows that were shot for portrait. They are all edited so that you can watch them in portrait, but you can clearly tell that they were made for landscape and that they look better in landscape. I don't know.
I found that to be true. I was going to say, like, everything is required to give a landscape and portrait version. They're separate versions. They're both streamed to your phone. That's how you're able to turn it. And it does give you the choice of like, how do I want to watch this? But I'm like you, Bryce. Everything I watched, I immediately turned to landscape because I'm like, oh, I'm not seeing the whole picture. Let me turn it so I can see the whole thing.
This is interesting because I think we've touched upon an accidental way for Quibi to win. If they can come up with content that flat out is superior in a portrait experience compared to landscape, then I think they really could win.
Is that what people are saying though? Are people like, gosh, I really love TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube, but the content isn't for portrait mode. If only someone would make a portrait mode version.
Oh my gosh, we're watching Bryce turn his phone and I feel claustrophobic every time he goes portrait. It's not great.
I mean, I will tell you, I probably shouldn't say this publicly, but nobody's watching this, right?
We're not on Quibi after all.
Good, yes, right.
We're too long. Actually, we're a 7-episode epic on Quibi.
This conversation.
I happen to work for a company that mandated that it makes video for phones, and mandated all of our stuff be portrait mode, and I hate it every single day. I hate it every single day that we are, but that's how people, like you're saying, it's how people want the mere act of holding their phone sideways. People, or at least executives, think people hate, and I don't know if that's true or not, but it certainly is something that, like the moment I described that we all lived through, where people said nobody wants to watch things longer than 2.5 minutes on the internet. All the executives have decided nobody wants to turn their phone sideways anymore. So let's make things that are portrait because that's how people consume stuff. I just think it is limiting in a way that is unsurmountable. It is the kinds of entertainment I enjoy are always going to be worse in portrait mode.
I think everybody watches TikTok in portrait. Everybody watches Instagram in portrait. Most people probably watch YouTube in portrait because they don't have to think about it. Quibi makes you think about it. And I think that's a mistake because they give you that choice and they show you like, well, it is better in landscape. I want to finish with, how does Quibi win? How are we wrong? How does Quibi end up being the thing that we're like, gosh, we didn't think it would take off? That Jeffrey Katzenberg and Meg Whitman, they sure knew what they were talking about.
It is.
We hit on a couple of them so far. One is a hit show that everybody's like, I got to watch it. Another is having good portrait video where it's like, oh, wow, it looks really good in portrait. They cracked the code. Anything else?
I mean, I think just to double down on that second one, Jeff and I were just talking about Half-Life Alyx. Half-Life Alyx would be garbage in a 2D screen with a mouse and keyboard situation. It would be too easy. It would be too simplistic. It would not be good. By limiting it to a VR experience only, which, by the way, according to Valve, the reason that it's not Half-Life 3, the reason it's a prequel, Half-Life Alyx, is because Half-Life 3 would have the expectation of everybody being able to play it, and they wanted to do something that specifically limited it only to people who are into the VR experience. Quibi can pull off the same thing, but you have to figure out what can you do in portrait mode that you cannot do in widescreen mode. And maybe that's like a VR 3D spinning around experience. Like there are depths to plumb there, but we're not really seeing this from the first of their offerings.
I think there's an opportunity to look at the phone as a more intimate device. And I think that, I don't know if it's Quibi who's going to do it, but I think that the idea of having the phone we already see it to a certain extent with Instagram, this feeling of being connected to people rather than just watching them from afar. is something that the phone allows, right? You watch some famous musicians Instagram, they're in their home, they're talking directly to you. In the same way that I think I personally have benefited by creating podcasts, being in people's ears, it's more intimate than listening to the radio or whatever. And I think that's why people connect with podcasts more so than even their favorite radio shows. It's because there's an intimacy. And I think the phone, by definition, is a more intimate device. It's closer to you. It's smaller. You use it to talk to people you love. It is not like a television or a computer screen. And I think there's an opportunity there. I don't know how you capitalize on it exactly, but I think there's an opportunity.
Oh my gosh. No, Jeff, you just reminded me of something. In fact, I want to recommend anybody who's listening who hasn't already listened to it. There's a podcast from the CBC, from the Canadian Broadcast Company, called Under the Influence, where an ad man of multiple decades just Terry O'Reilly gives all of these breakdowns of great ad campaigns and what makes them great. And he did a whole episode on comic book advertising. And there's one moment that haunts me. He said comic book advertising were a secret conversation between an advertiser and a child that a parent would never hear. And that's why Sea Monkeys became huge. That's why the Johnson Smith catalog became huge. Is because
you want those X-ray specs, kid?
Exactly.
X-ray specs?
So you could say things that you would never be caught saying in front of a parent, but you could say it directly to a child. And likewise, I think you're onto something, Jeff, that there is something private and personal. Nobody ever will watch Quibi in a group. So what do you, that's the third thing, Tom, is we talked about the portrait mode stuff. The third thing is, what can you say to one person that you would never, ever say to a group of people?
Well, and I was about to add, YouTube and Instagram are conversations between the creator and you.
Yeah.
And TikTok, not always. Sometimes it's more like you're a lurker observer, but it's still personal. It's still you are getting to peek in on this thing that's happening, not you are part of an audience at a movie. And that's still the problem with Quibi's content right now, is it feels like it should be on a bigger screen and you should be watching it with a bunch of other people. It's not personal in most of the cases.
You know what? We deal with the same thing here on the show. People want to be experiencing it with other people. And I say, look, man, you can either show it in front of a bunch of people or you can join a whole bunch of people, including the more than 1,000 people who support us, keeping this loud, live, and direct to you guys at patreon.com/Cordkillers.
Yep. If you hate not supporting us, fix it. Patreon.com/Cordkillers.
Well played, Tom. Nicely done.
All right, let's talk about how to watch. So one of the things that is like the Cubs winning the World Series is Amazon now lets you buy movies and TV shows in its iOS and Apple TV apps. We kind of never thought that would happen because users previously had to purchase or rent the shows on the web and then go to the app and get access to them, because Apple takes 30% of all in-app purchases and doesn't let companies subvert that by linking to their own purchasing methods, or at least they didn't used to. Apple announced it has established a program for premium subscription video entertainment providers, letting them use the payment system tied to the existing subscription rather than the Apple one, which of course takes the 30% cut. This change lets Amazon Prime Video, as well as Canal Plus and Altice One, offer purchases in its iOS and Apple TV apps through the thing you already set up. Now, it's unsure. Nobody's gotten confirmation on whether if you set up an account through that app on iOS, is Apple still taking a cut? But if you set it up elsewhere, like you usually do with Amazon Prime, right? You usually do it on the web, then the existing credit card attached to your account will be used to make the purchases in your iOS app. The program also brings integration with the Apple TV app, AirPlay 2 support, tvOS apps, universal search, Siri support, and single or zero sign-on. So it seems to be a way that Apple was able to mollify these companies, Amazon in particular, into letting them have greater integration into the Apple TV app so that they can continue to make that Apple TV app more compelling.
So, Tom and Jeff, what do you think the odds are that this has anything to do with it. I noticed 4 months ago that for the first time, in the app for Audible was able to spend an Audible credit in order to get the next thing. It used to be like, this is the book I want. I just finished the first book in this series.
If you have the credits already, when that happened, most people guessed that was because Amazon just made the point to Apple, like, hey, they're not making a purchase. This is something they already purchased, right? And they're just cashing it in. I'm almost certain now that came up because Amazon was having this conversation about the video, and there's like, by the way, like this is a little different. And Apple's like, oh yeah, I guess that's okay. Go ahead and do that. I think there is probably
so I'm not crazy. Like there's something to the idea that this was a precursor or at least a part of the same conversation.
I think it was a side conversation that could have easily grown out of this one. Sure.
Yeah. Regardless, it's good news for content creators, and I think it's a smart move for Apple. I mean, I think that they were being. I do think, and yeah, I don't know, much like the judgment on pornography, I'll know it when I see it. I can't point to exactly why the rules should be different for apps versus videos or whatever, but it does feel like it's a smart move for Apple to back away and allow, as they put whatever constitutes a premier video provider, to be able to, not take a third of their profits on everything.
No, you're right, Brian. I think this should apply to porn videos.
That's what I heard him say too, Jeff.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think only leave them
right.
69%.
Yeah. 31%. I think this is the beginning of a sea change in the way Apple does things. And I've always felt that this rigid adherence to 30%, no matter what, you can't even link out to your website to skip, it's been ridiculous. I understand that Apple doesn't want to have alternate payment systems, and I think there's some good defenses of that. This shows that they can have a system that doesn't allow alternate payment systems in the app ecosystem, but still allows you a reasonable way to make your purchases without having to give Apple 30% when they're not doing anything. I think Apple's justified in taking 30% when they're operating the payment system for you. The justification or the argument against that by big companies like Amazon and Netflix has been, we can run our own. We don't need you to do it.
I think it's also, obviously they're not the dominant force in all markets, but they certainly have sort of peaked and plateaued for the amount of the market that they're going to dominate. It's sort of an acknowledgement that it's like, yes, we've won this much territory. We're not threatened anymore by the fact that you guys are doing business in the port of Hong Kong or whatever.
All right, let's talk about what to watch in Under Surveillance.
Not like real estate. It's all about location. Under Surveillance.
Rick and Morty has a date. It's coming back to Adult Swim May 3rd. A new trailer is out. How you feeling about this, y'all?
The trailer was kind of bad. I understand why everybody thought it was a April Fool's joke.
Oh, I thought it was cool.
It was just very cliched and by the numbers. So much so that for a show that subverts expectations like Rick and Morty, that I wouldn't blame people for the fact that it came out on April 1st for thinking it was some kind of April Fool's joke.
Jeff?
I mean, I'm excited for more Rick and Morty.
Yes, me too.
I have a friend of a friend writes on the show, and I've heard that it's a crazy environment. I don't want to betray the need of trust there, but I'm always amazed that any shows come out of that. They can actually finish anything. So I'm excited to get more Rick and Morty.
CBS series All Rise is a drama set in a courthouse, and a new episode has been produced during the lockdown, shooting video from actors' homes using programs like FaceTime, WebEx, Zoom, etc. There is some visual effects being added. The episode will tell how the characters from the courthouse are dealing with the effects of COVID-19. Judge Benner will authorize Judge Lola Carmichael to preside over a virtual bench trial, while other characters try to maintain their relationships at a distance, and one tries to make extra money as a food delivery driver. The episode is going to air May 4th at 9 p.m. on CBS.
This is
brilliant.
A one-off episode, right?
Correct.
I wonder how many times you could do that, because like we're dealing with that with the Modern Rogue, and as we describe them internally, we talk about we can only do so many Charlie's Angels episodes. We could do some episodes where Jason is at home and he's giving Brian a quest. I buried a thing over here. Send me a smoke signal. Build a radio out of these. But at some point, it ends up changing the format of the entire show. So we'll see. I'm excited that new content's being made, though.
I think it's a brilliant solution to a really unique problem. And yeah, you're right. It either becomes a show about living under quarantine or you do it once. But I think doing it once is pretty cool.
I agree.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you there. Disney animator Hiram Osman and actor Josh Gad have created new Frozen animated shorts starring Olaf the Snowman, who is voiced by Josh Gad. At Home with Olaf is available on YouTube, made entirely by Gad and Osmond from their homes. These are quick animation turnarounds, so they were using existing models and stuff like that to throw them together.
Do you want to not go outside?
This makes sense, though, because the models are all made. The animators can all work from home and the talent can all work from home. Why wouldn't you? And this is a bit like we were talking about VR before we started the podcast. This is a great way to simulate the experience of big, high production stuff on the cheap.
In the reality where this virus never goes away, all content is animated content.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did talk about that last week. Yeah.
Fox is already planning for the return of sports, though, Jeff. They're feeling positive, meeting with advertisers to get ad buys for Q3 and Q4. July marks the beginning of Q3, so they're like, look, we're going to have sports later this year. We're really certain of that. NFL and college football start back up in August. There's talk of a compressed Major League Baseball season that might run into December. Finishing the season for the NHL and NBA would move into the fall, and that would make for a packed second half of 2020.
I mean, that makes sense.
Here's hoping.
Yeah. Either that or everybody plays Madden. It'll be fine either way.
Tom, how do you feel? I know you're a big baseball fan. How do you feel about 7-inning games that they were floating the idea of?
I mean,
double headers, like double headers every day, but 7
double headers every day. I'm fine with that. 7-inning games is like changing the fundamental major league.
Yeah.
You know,
it's like the XFL.
You don't need relief pitching. You don't, it's like, it's crazy.
I mean, I don't know. They're going to have to come up with something creative, though. It's life during wartime, right? So
yeah,
I was watching one of the NASCAR races yesterday, and Eileen walked in the room. She's like, oh, they're racing? I'm like, it's a video game. And then she's like, oh, I almost couldn't tell.
I called this. I called this last week. That's awesome.
This is, every sci-fi movie, gladiator ball. It's like the bad sci-fi movie. This is our reality now.
And finally, South by Southwest Film Festival is going to show some of its festival films for free in front of the paywall on Amazon Prime Video. If a filmmaker chooses to participate, they will get paid the screening fee for making the film available over a 10-day period. The idea is to kind of simulate what would happen if you went to the South by Southwest Film Festival. Tribeca Film Festival, which is a little less open to the public, a little less of a public event than South by Southwest, is going to run some of its programming online April 15th through the 26th on the Industry Extranet Resource Hub for journalists and members of the industry. That way buyers can watch and bid on the films, which is why you enter these things. It's not just to get them seen, it's to get them purchased and distributed. Tribeca's Cinema 360 will also release 15 virtual reality films for the public on Oculus TV.
Real quick side jag, Jeff, I'm convinced that a big part of the reason these things happen is because people want the social proof of the reactions of other people. I'm convinced that part of the reason YouTube has done so well is because it put very prominently displayed the number of views every video had, thereby giving a social proof thing. Do you think if we're trying to seek to replace film festivals or any variety, there'll be a widget to fill that in? Or is this totally just this is a 2020 thing only, and we're just sort of filling in the gap this year? We'll get back to business as usual in the future.
I think everybody who runs these things, which are money-making enterprises, hopes it's the latter. I think all of them want it to be a blip. We have to deal with it this year. We'll be back on track next year. That's why we saw the ESA announce the dates for E3 2021, just to assure everyone it's going to happen next year. We promise, even if that's not how it actually pans out. I think all of these organizations really want a return to normalcy, and because they have to reinvent themselves.
Yeah. Well, and E3 is a good example because I used to love going to E3 for the excitement of being there. And then one year I didn't go and I realized I had a better experience just watching all the announcements because I never had that FOMO of running around trying to figure out what's the thing I have to see.
Well, yeah, I mean, this year is an accelerant to something that was already happening, which is the slow heat death of E3. You know, all these companies are realizing we don't need a press conference. We have the internet. We can disintermediate our message. We don't need the people to relay it to the masses. We have the masses. And Nintendo realized that long ago. That's why they stopped doing all that stuff years ago and started doing Nintendo Directs. And now Sony is on that bandwagon too. I don't think, you know, even before COVID, Sony was like, we're not going to E3 anymore. I think this thing that's happening now is really for the internetification of everything. Everybody's jobs are now, everybody's on Zoom doing their jobs. I think it is going to, there's not going to be a switch that's flipped to all go back to normal. We are in a paradigm shift that's going to have long lasting effects. People realize, oh, this meeting could have been an email, you know, like that's where we are now. And I think you're going to see a lot of these industries not completely go back after this.
Yeah.
We got a bunch of benefit performances getting put together to raise money for organizations dealing with COVID-19. Late night hosts and celebrities are coming together for One World Together at Home to raise money for the COVID-19 Solidarity Response Fund. So Jimmy Fallon, Jimmy Kimmel, and Stephen Colbert will co-host. Actually, they'll all host because I think co-host is a rung down. So they're all hosts. And you're going to get music from Billie Eilish, Alanis Morissette, Chris Martin, Elton John, John Legend, Casey Musgraves, and more. The stream is also going to run cross-platform: Apple, Facebook, Instagram, Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, ABC, NBC, CBS, and BBC One, among others.
You won't be able to escape it.
That's right. It's the only thing that'll be on starting April 18th at 8 p.m. Eastern. Also, Phoebe Waller-Bridge's live theater performance of Fleabag from 2019 will be released through Soho Theaters sites in most of the world on Amazon Prime Video in the U.S. Profits from renting that will be donated to charities supporting the work to fight COVID-19. And likewise, last November's benefit concert celebrating Disney's 25 years on Broadway will stream on April 13th on BroadwayCares.org to raise money for Broadway Cares Equity Fights AIDS COVID-19 Emergency Assistance Fund. The stream will include live interviews with Disney stars throughout as well, in between the numbers that are from the recorded thing in November. So I think we're just beginning to see a bunch of these, and we'll probably see a few more.
Yes, and I may or may not be involved in one upcoming. I'll let you know.
Yeah,
You're
let us know.
singing Disney tunes on the Disney's 25-year anniversary.
Whoa!
Yeah.
Spoiler alert! Come on, man.
Do you want to build some magic? Disney announced that original 4:3 aspect ratios of The Simpsons will be finally available on Disney Plus by the end of May. The episodes you get right now are cropped to fit 16:9 screens, leaving some of the jokes off the screen sometimes. Simpsons released its episodes in 4:3 until about midway through the 20th season in 2009. So the ones you see on Disney Plus right now from 2009's second half onward were always in 16:9, so those are fine. Variety sources say Joby Harold has been hired to write the Obi-Wan Kenobi series for Disney Plus. Hossein Amini left the series as a writer in January. Joby's taken over. Joby Harold has not written for TV before. He was EP on John Wick 3. He's been a co-writer on a few things for movies and an EP. A YouTube channel called The Shows Must Go On will feature free streams of Andrew Lloyd Webber musicals once a week for 48 hours, starting this past Friday with Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. You can't see that one anymore. But coming up this Friday, April 10th, will be Jesus Christ Superstar. Again, once it starts on Friday, it's available for 48 hours. And a couple other things. The NBC Sky World News Service has been delayed. They were wanting to launch it in summer, but it required a lot of travel to create, and the UK lockdown prevented completion of its London production facilities, so they just can't make it happen. And finally, the movie Misbehavior, starring Keira Knightley and Gugu Mbatha-Raw, came out in the UK March 19th or March 13th, just in time for theaters to shut down. And so it's being released online starting April 15th. Pablo Larraín's Emma is going to skip theatrical release and debut online May 2nd. Top Gun Maverick not being released digitally. That one's been delayed from June 24th to December 23rd. A Quiet Place Part 2 now has a September 4th premiere date. And the SpongeBob movie, Sponge on the Run, has been moved from May 22nd to July 31st.
Out of everything you just mentioned, Tom, the one that was most surprising was the idea of 48-hour windowed releases on YouTube. Have we seen anything that has been a windowed release on YouTube? And why aren't more people doing that?
Basically, it's doing the rental model. If you rent something from YouTube through the store, you get it for 48 hours, just like any rental, except you don't have to pay the rental.
Yeah, I guess.
So basically, it's saying it's like renting the Andrew Lloyd Webber musicals, but for free.
Yeah, I guess I'm surprised that we haven't seen that much before now. I'm sure there's some kind of precedent, but I don't think we've discussed that. I think it's a really smart idea. I think that's good bandwidth.
All right, let's talk about what we've had our eyes on. Something you've been watching lately, Jeff, that you'd like to let folks know about.
Oh my goodness. I have been watching so many things. I just watched Portrait of a Lady on Fire on Hulu, which I found to be very beautiful. A slow burn, but very, very beautiful. And I watched WrestleMania, which is like, what a weird thing, man. There are two matches in it that are worth the $10 for the month of WWE alone. One of them is the Undertaker match, which is this weird, like, cinematic, bizarre idea that they went with. It's like, let's just shoot a horror movie and make it a wrestling match. And then the next one is the John Cena Bray Wyatt match, which is this. It's not even describable. I can't even describe it. It's this bizarre. Psychedelic
I did not
trip.
see it, but somebody on Twitter described it as John Cena is wrestling a supernatural manifestation of his own anxieties of becoming a successful actor. Is that yes. Roughly what happened?
He becomes all the previous versions of himself inside all the previous versions of WWE television, and unable to get out and have any agency in his own life. It's like a love letter to people who have been watching wrestling for a long time, because it like hits all of the nostalgia buttons. It's an amazing thing, and probably wouldn't have happened but for the fact that they had to reinvent what WrestleMania was going to be this year. So it's worth watching if you're into wrestling at all. WWE.com has a $10 a month subscription fee that gets you all their content, which is a lot. So, it used to be the kind of thing where you would have to pay $60 for just WrestleMania. Now you get $10 a month and you get everything. So you could just pay $10 and then cancel it if you wanted to just watch WrestleMania. And it was 2 nights this year, which is also a thing they just pulled out of their asses at the last minute. But it was like, hey, let's just do it for 2 nights, because we don't have to do two venues. We don't have to do 2 audiences. We just do it again. That's crazy.
Brian, what about you?
Dude, I did get caught up on Ozark. Finally saw all of season 2 and season 3. It's a different show than it begins as, but I like what it becomes. Also, Ruth is the secret star of the show. And I dipped a toe into Tales from the Loop, the new Amazon Prime original. Man, are those slow, but also pretty, but also tedious, and also kind of trite, but also remind me of golden age of science fiction short stories. It's great to play, or it's great to watch while you're playing Hearthstone.
Okay, that's how you got to Legend, Tales from the Loop. Congratulations.
I did.
All right, I'm going to mention we've been doing a Fast and Furious rewatch. I've mentioned it, but it's not a rewatch for us. It's just a watch. Catch up is the word. For the past several weeks, that's been our thing, is on Saturday nights we watch a Fast and Furious movie, and we watched Furious 6. It's the first time where both of us didn't say that is definitely the best one so far. I wasn't sure if I liked 5 or 6 better, but they're still just dumb fun. The Furious 6 is the one where it starts to change from just being a heist movie that has also got racing in it to being a heist movie with racing in it that also is kind of a spy movie or a thriller crime sort of situation. It's the second movie with Dwayne Johnson in it. And I'm just having so much fun filling in this gap in my cultural literacy. And you can find them in various places. There's no one place. Some of them are only available for rental. Furious 5 was available on, or Fast 5 was available on HBO. So it kind of varies, but it's been enjoyable for me. Bryce, what should we be on the lookout for?
Hey, we got a lookout from Nikki, who writes, "Hi guys, I wanted to recommend Zoe's Extraordinary Playlist. I've been watching it on Hulu. The concept is a girl can hear people's thoughts or problems, which manifest as a musical style performance that only she can hear. I've loved musicals that are interweaved with stories on shows like Eli Stone and Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, and I love this now. Normally the show goes like this. Zoe hears a song or two, we get to watch a zany performance in her head, and then we watch her work with whoever the singer is to help them work through their emotional issues. The last episode, Zoe's Extraordinary Glitch, was very different. Zoe is the one with the emotional problem that she's not facing, and so she ends up singing and dancing. It was tragically and embarrassingly hilarious and should be watched by everyone. I won't lie, it will more than likely bring you to tears. Nikki M. from Omaha." Thank you, Nikki. Zoe's Extraordinary Playlist is currently airing on NBC, and as of this recording, all 9 episodes are streaming now on Hulu. If you got something we should be on the lookout for, email us, cordkillers@gmail.com.
Well, sadly, we need to say goodbye to Jeff Cannata right now. But thank you, Jeff, so much for joining us, man. I cannot tell you how important for me personally We Have Concerns coming back has been.
Thank you.
I love you and Anthony already, but then I also am fans of the versions of you and Anthony on We Have Concerns. It's so much fun to listen to.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, we're back. We just had the first episode back. It came out last week, and we're back. So We Have Concerns. If you remember that show, we're doing that. I'm so sorry that I have to leave. I have dad duties right now, but you guys are the best. I miss you both terribly. It is such a joy to just see your faces and be able to talk to you for a short time. We got to do this again. I love you guys.
Hells yeah.
Likewise. When we're allowed to leave our houses, I will see you.
Indeed. Indeed.
All right, take care, man.
All right, fellas. Bye.
Folks, don't forget also that if you want to read a book, I wrote one for you, just for you, tomsnewbook.com. You can go find it. It's called Trigger. It's about a time traveler who's feeling guilty about having to save the universe, really just wants to find some pie and coffee, but his time ship Verity convinces him he should save the universe again. Thank you to all of the people who have already bought it, some of you who have already finished reading it. The one thing I will encourage you to do, if you have finished it, no matter what you think of it, go review it. Even if you didn't buy it on Amazon, go review it on Amazon because that helps more people discover it. That's tomsnewbook.com.
I just bought it again. I'm going to keep buying it every time you mention it.
And then review it every time.
Yes.
No, thank you. Thank you, folks, thank you, Brian. You didn't have to do that again. What you should do also is go to doghousesystems.com/v/rogue and get yourself a free solid state drive and support the fact that we're using these Doghouse systems to bring you this show right now.
Hells yeah, dude. Everybody wants a new computer right now. All of y'all are running up against the limitations of your old ass system. Get yourself a new ass system. Get it from Doghouse. We trust them. You should too.
Let's move on to the front lines.
Front lines.
Oh, Brian calls it again. Multiple small theater chains, including the Alamo Drafthouse, have begun launching virtual cinemas that let viewers support their local theater and watch movies from home. Movies cost around $12 to rent for a couple of days. Alamo's website, called birthmoviesdeath.com, is for folks to chat about the movies they just saw after they watch them so that they can kind of do their regular like genre showings and simulate that talk you have with other people at the bar afterwards.
Heck yeah, dude. If it can be virtualized, it will be virtualized. Get ready for the 20s, the lonely 20s, as we'll call them. Warner Media has hired original Sulu CEO Jason Kilar to be its new CEO. John Stanky will move back to only holding the AT&T COO role, and Kilar will report to Stanky. Warner Media's HBO Max is set to launch in May. Kilar will also oversee sports, news, entertainment networks like HBO, CNN, and TNT, as well as Warner Brothers Studios.
Smart move for HBO Max. Kilar is going to bring a lot of good ideas and perspective to that. I don't know how I would feel running Warner Brothers Studios while working for the guy who used to run Hulu.
Probably good, because Hulu seemed to do okay. Warner Brothers Studios, I don't know what to expect.
I'm just saying, if I'm a film exec and somebody who's never worked in film is now my boss and only knows digital, I don't know. I mean, Kilar, by all accounts, is a really good manager, though, so I'm sure it'll work out fine.
Yeah.
April 3rd, HBO made more than 500 hours of its content available to stream without paying HBO. When did they hire Kilar? This is a pretty good move. Among the content are The Wire, Barry, Sopranos, Succession, bunch of others, including movies. Game of Thrones Westworld, not part of that, though, so not everything is free. And the Roku channel has now included all of those free HBO shows in its app, as well as an additional 20 episodes of Sesame Street from between 2016 and 2018. And those will be available on the Roku channel until May 15th.
And as advertisers either remove or lessen ad runs, NBC announced it will reduce ad inventory across its channel and departments. This means that fewer commercials will appear in almost every type of programming. In programming that can adapt, like news, there will just be more news. In edited content that can't easily be expanded, clips from talk shows will fill some of the gaps. NBC will be offering commercial-free family movie nights, which will actually have sponsors, just not all the commercial interruptions. That's so interesting because the people who are reducing their ad buys, I feel like are reducing these massive bulk ad buys. Whereas I feel like, and this is totally subjective, this is me, disclosure, I host some YouTube channels, we're seeing more interest in targeted ad buys where people are able to track how well they're working. We're seeing people reduce their total ad spend, but instead of massive cookie cutter operations, they're looking for more specific targeted audiences.
There's also just big industries. NBC has huge ad buys from the airlines and the car makers, and both of those are cutting back their ad spending right now. So it's all part of that mix. You're right. Roku released OS 9.3 to streaming boxes for this month, with TVs to get it in the months after. The update adds Spanish language support to voice commands, improves the understanding of natural speech in Canada, Ireland, and the UK, and voice search results will now be more visual, and some channels will support play from search, so you can just go straight into the episode you want.
And finally, filming of TV and movies in China has just resumed for the first time since the country shut down in February. Shot down commerce is what they shot down. Traffic jams have returned in Shanghai and Shenzhen, although Beijing still has restrictions on transport. New film and TV productions are expected to be ready for release in Q3 or 4. Here we go.
Okay, so we can amend what Jeff said earlier. In the future, all shows will be animated or from China.
Yeah.
Right,
although we didn't we already see a taste of that in Westworld where I think Maeve says something like, okay, of all the ridiculous places you could make up for me in a simulation, he's like, this is Shanghai.
This is really what Shanghai looks
yes,
like.
exactly.
Yeah. All right, let's get to some dispatches from the front. Donovan Hicks says, hey, killers, have to say I'm totally in the same boat as Lamar. Love movies, but prefer to watch them at home. My thing is my wife and I value our time greatly. So driving to the theater, finding parking, standing in line to buy a ticket, or even if you already got a ticket online, waiting on the usher to clip it, sitting through previews you already saw online, driving home, all adds up to an extra hour plus for an already average 2-hour movie. That's a big chunk of my weekend when I have so many other things to get done. Keep the good shows coming, guys. Appreciate what you and awesome guests like Lamar do. Thank you, Donovan.
Am I wrong, Tom? Is that one of those classic feature or bug arguments? Because, like, to me, that's a whole extra hour of distraction that I have. It's like a 3-hour event.
It kind of depends on what your goal is, right? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Josh writes in from Fort Wayne, Indiana, saying, I just finished the last episode. You mentioned sending Conan some Logitech 920s. This made me curious. What cameras do you all use? How convenient, because this past week on the Scam Nation channel, if you go to scamnation.com, look at the most recent episode, you'll see that we spent about a half hour, just skip to the second half of the episode. Bryce and I, for the first time in many years, do a complete rundown of all of the equipment that we use right here in studio, so everybody at home can produce their own content, everything from the lighting to the backdrops to the cameras to the switching software to the computers used. It really came out great. I was really surprised at how many people showed up and how quality the whole experience was. How did you feel about it, Bryce?
Yeah, it was good. You know, and there was a really good informational first half of that interview with you and Michael Kent about writing and performing for online stuff. So if people are looking
at the types of stories that you tell when you're on camera change versus being in front front of a live audience.
Yeah, so I think that's good. And Tom, we had that DTNS roundtable last week.
Yeah, that's right. Bryce has got his foot in all the worlds. Daily Tech News Show did a how to live stream from home, like the cameras you need, the equipment you need, the software you need. That's at dailytechnewsshow.com. A week ago Wednesday was a special episode there. You can find it on our YouTube channel as well. To answer Josh's question, I use a Canon G40.
And we use GH2s here in the studio, old GH2s that we used to shoot Scam Squad on. So they're still high def.
All right, I'm going to read these next two in a row because I think they bear on each other a little bit, Brian. Or do you want to make a point on each one?
No. Just run us through.
Okay.
We're up against it.
Yeah, Michael in Texas says, I'm still watching Cordkillers, but I had an idea for how to make day and date streaming work. $150 for opening week. 90 days works out to about 13 weeks, so you reduce the price by $10 per week. By the time the 90 days runs out, we're back down to the $20 price most of these movies are running when they first release. This gives theaters a way to compete with the streaming at home price tag, while also giving studios a way to make dollars from us suckers who would rather not deal with the crowds and idiots who won't shut off their phones. Then we got Kevin saying, you were talking about how studios don't want to give up theater revenue since it seems like most studios are tied to mega corporations that have their own streaming services. I mean, the studios are the corporations that have their streaming services. He says, I think there is an opening for VIP or early access subscriber memberships. Imagine them tacking an $8 a month extra to their normal streaming prices for instant access to major new movies. This would bring in an extra money, and you can combine movie marketing with streaming brand marketing.
This is actually super appropriate given where the conversation went during this episode. We talked a bit about people approaching a problem with what they have to offer and not really listening to what the world wants from them. This is them. Both of these are people as consumers thinking about what they would accept to pay for. These are schemes but not thinking about ways to maximize the benefit while also pleasing the maximum number of people. I feel like anything short of essentially the airline flight model of dynamic pricing where supply and demand are met right in the middle is that's the way to make all sides happy. And anything that sounds simple to you probably will have rigidities and artifacts that you will not like on the periphery.
Yeah, the $8 a month is not going to be enough to make up the shortfall because that will drive people away from the theaters. Anything that even hints at driving people away from the theaters won't be accepted by the theaters. And as we talked about, you may be undervaluing just how much money. I mean, when we talk about, domestic gross and we say like they only made $40 million. That's a lot of money. So, they would still want theaters to be happy because they're making millions of dollars off theaters. And maybe they could get the theaters to sign up for the $150 opening week, but so far they haven't been. So I think the theaters are just have been, we'll see if this changes, just drawing a line in the sand and saying, no, you give us a 90-day exclusive, we'll accept nothing else. And until that weakens, you're not going to see any of these innovations.
I agree.
Our website is cordkillers.com. Our email address is cordkillers@gmail.com. Thank you again to Jeff Cannata for being with us. Go check out We Have Concerns as well. We're live on twitch.tv/Night Attack, which is also carried on diamondclub.tv Mondays at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. We'll see you again next time.
Hey, Tom Merritt.
Yes, Brian Brushwood.
Know who I love even more than my own children?
Your other children?
No, not my wife. I know what you're saying. I love our $5 patrons. These are the people that keep us loud, live, and independent. Thank you so much, $5 patrons.
You know what? I love them more than not life itself, because then I'd be dead and I couldn't appreciate them, but really, really, really close. And I'm so thankful that they are here to make this show happen.
Thank you so much to all of our $5 a month patrons. You guys are wizards. You're champions.
Thank you, everyone.
You're heroes.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.